Thank you guys all for attending. We've got a Enterprise Mobility Suite. Again, the first in our three-part series. Microsoft has something called Modern Workplace, where Enterprise Mobility Suite is combined with Windows 10 and with Office 365 to compose a lot of productivity gains that can be had. And so we're going to take our stab at describing to you what's in Enterprise Mobility Suite, how will it benefit you, what are the major areas where people are getting value from this. So to that end, and we're going to try and use a combination of slides, some whiteboarding, and even some demonstrations to try and get this home to you. Don't be daunted if I'm kind of moving through slides quickly. I think it's just trying to get the concepts down and trying to give us a little frame for our security conversation we're about to have. To that end, Peters & Associates has developed a security wheel just to kind of frame how we have discussions. And as you'll notice, at the center of this wheel is data. Stemming out from there are various levels of controls, whether those be, hardware controls or compliance or your typical firewalls and some of the infrastructure layers. Certainly identity is one of those areas that kind of cuts through many of them, and that's going to be a lot of our conversation today. So just want to kind of throw the wheel out there to kind of give you a little context for the conversation. I know that wheel has been a part of our webinars for the last few years here as we continue to have these conversations around security with customers. So a bit of an eye chart, but this is the areas of Office 365, both the suite that starts at the bottom, which is the Office 365, I'll call it Enterprise 3 plan, Office 365 E5, and then we sort of build up. The next row is EMS, E3, and E5. And what we're going to do today, and you're going to see this multiple times, it's going to be burned into your retinas actually, is we're going to just look at various sections of this. And if you'll keep in mind, our focus today is on Enterprise Mobility Suite. So we're going to focus specifically on the 7 topics that you see there that are in the box. I am highly versed at all the items that are available down below as part of the Office 365 suite, and we'll actually be covering those as part of our the third part of our webinar series on Office 365. There's also some elements of Windows 10 that have security elements that aren't on this chart that we'll be covering as a part of the other webinar too. So this is a series. It's meant to kind of give you a broad brush look at all the capabilities that are in here and where people are getting value. So without further ado, let's focus on the box section. Okay. There's 4 specific areas we're going to be looking at as kind of the grid highlighted here last. The 4 columns, the first one is identity and access management. And so we're going to dive into that area first. And identity, as we kind of look at the wheel, is obviously a very big part of it, right? It cuts across many layers. Oftentimes it gives us native access directly to data independent of your firewall and so forth. And so with that in mind, let's take a look at specifically what area of this we're going to be looking at. So at this point, we're going to focus on identity and access management, Azure Active Directory, what's known as Plan 1 and Plan 2. Now, many of you may have Office 365 today, and if so, if you'll look at the bottom of that column, you'll see that you actually have Azure AD Basic. Okay, and you have some of the capabilities that we're going to be describing right within the plan that you have, but we're going to focus our efforts again within the box and focus on what Plan 1 and Plan 2 can gain you within that series. It would be good to kind of start off with a primer on identity, and this is a quick one, I promise. But as we kind of look at identity, one of the things we notice is that network perimeters, which we've established for years, things like firewalls or web content filters or even VPNs, are awesome at taking care of traditional threats, right? They block 95% of traffic that's coming out inbound to them. What they're terrible at, however, is they're terrible at things that are user-based, things like phishing attacks, or if your credentials have been leaked, then a firewall or a web content filter or a VPN doesn't mean anything, right? It's a network perimeter can be penetrated. Equally challenging for IT is the fact that organizations are using data on unmanaged devices today. Also, people are leveraging cloud applications. The average user is using 12 to 15 cloud applications. And either IT either knows about it, in which case they're approved cloud services, or they don't know about it and they're shadow IT services. But either way, the cloud is being leveraged heavily, and your data is existing on unmanaged devices and being used by unmanaged applications. So this drives a need for something called an identity perimeter. An identity perimeter can help us with all of these issues. It focuses in with things like multi-factor, conditional access, and login risk intelligence, which we're going to go into now. Start off with a whiteboard, and sorry for the creative pen drawing, but it kind of adds some variety to our day. I think we all have, oops, if I go back here a screen and go to the drawing portion, you know, let's escape out of this, and I'm actually going to present my screen. All right, let's go. Well, you should all be seeing the welcome sign right there, and I'm going to clear that and just kind of do some drawing here for you. Active Directory. I think every organization has Active Directory, right? And within this Active Directory are a number of things, but let's say at a minimum there's users and groups, okay? Many of you have Office 365 today and therefore have Azure Active Directory up in the cloud. But this also contains your users and groups. And what Azure Active Directory is doing today is possibly the authentication and so forth for all of the Office 365 apps at a minimum. So that could be, you know, Exchange, could be Skype, and so forth. But what a lot of people don't know is that IT is able to enable the organization to have a web portal page where applications such as this are presented, but also other applications can be presented. Okay, and those could include Box, Concur, ADP, and 2,500 other applications. Okay. And what it does is it provides capabilities to do single sign-on onto these applications. So it actually will go to the website and leverage these applications that were available in the portal and the single sign-on capability so that users not only are presented an icon for their Concur application or their ADP application, but also the same credentials can be used or stored credentials can be used so that they don't have to navigate all the mind-numbing number of credentials used to leverage these applications. Additionally, IT might have certain applications, maybe like Concur or ADP, payroll and expense management, where those are important enough you may want to tag on things like multi-factor authentication in order to not only know your login and password to get into that application, but also leveraging your phone, maybe a text to your phone or an authenticator app on your application, or even a phone call to your phone as a second factor in order to gain access to this. And additional benefits of this are things like self-service password reset. Okay, and I'll just label it SSPR. But self-service password reset enables us to have modern authentication capabilities, probably something similar to what you have with your bank today. If you forget your login and password at your bank, you don't have to call a teller, right, to get things changed. Instead, it says forgot login is literally one of the features right there on the website. And it usually prompts you with a text to your phone or a second email address or some challenge questions. All of those features are available here with self-service password reset as a primer for this. Other things that are relevant is things like groups. So as mentioned, the groups over here in AD are also represented in Azure AD. But the Azure AD also contains the capability to have special groups above and beyond the ones that are synchronized. And these groups, and I'll just put a little plus sign by them, are special groups. And those groups could even be application related. So something like ADP group could be that where if you have access to the ADP and are put in the ADP group, then you are provisioned the ADP application and you're suddenly given single sign-on onto the ADP app. Equally, if you, let's say you delete a user has left your organization, that user could be gone from here. If they're a member of that special group, they could be removed from the group. And by being removed from the group, the application access is suddenly gone also. So all of these things are kind of tied together in one way, that provisioning is actually a capability also to create and to take away access to these new accounts in the cloud. So I kind of want to just give you a little snippet of how that works, because you can get lost sometimes in the console as to how easy some of this is, but conceptually quite easy. So let me go back to the PowerPoint and kind of show you some of this stuff in slides, and then we'll zip out to a demo. Certainly, if there's any questions along the way, take yourself off mute, and we'll let's make a go of this, but and make sure that you understand the concepts as we go forward. Let me just get the drawing, or I'll put the pointer on here. So on this slide, kind of the same thing I just drew. I just wanted to make sure that you saw that over here on the application, that things like this, these cloud apps, are all available to you. Again, about 2,500 applications. In addition, obviously, that's in addition to your Office 365 applications. And above and beyond that, you also can publish on-prem applications. Let's say you have some web-based applications, an internal portal, or internal web SaaS applications that you have. Those can be announced too into that portal page. Again, just kind of another graphic kind of showing the same thing. SaaS applications, Microsoft Azure AD kind of at the heart of things, with 2,500 applications available to you. And just again, another graphic, but here showing you the self-service password reset kind of being part of things. I'd also, I didn't mention this, but application access requests. So as being a part of that group, you might ask for access to something. So yeah, you may say to an administrator, hey, I'd like access, and this is all online available as part of the web portal. I'd like access to that application. I see it available. I don't have access today. Can I have application access? And that could be granted by an administrator or by someone you delegate to take advantage of that. So that's some good background. On this slide, I simply wanted to make mention of the fact that multi-factor authentication, which is heavily used and kind of denoted here, when the user is using it, in addition to just having MFA application enabled applications, you can take into account something called conditions. And these conditions might say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to make you MFA when you're here in the office. But if you're outside of the office or not on our VPN, then I'm going to make you MFA. Or maybe your device is in a certain state, it's unpatched or doesn't have the proper VPN client or something of that nature, or maybe it's a mobile device and it's been rooted. All of those might be device states that make you either get blocked or have MFA. Per application, maybe just the ADP and Concur, remember, had financial data, but maybe there's several applications where for particular users or particular applications, you don't want them to have to MFA. And last but not least, we can incorporate something called risk into this, leveraging features of Azure Identity Protection and Privileged Identity, which we'll talk about more. But those are real-time risk scores for a user based on their identity, which can force them to either allow or enforce the MFA. So let's kind of walk through some visual examples here on the screen. So let's say you've got a user here. You can see that they're a sales account. They're out in London. The last sign-in was 5 hours ago. They've got a very healthy device, and conditional access risk, meaning the real-time risk for this, for their identity, is low. With all of those factors in place, you might say, hey, I'm going to allow access to this travel expense app. But in another case, you've got a user, same sort of area, London, UK, got a little bit of a problem because they've got some executive privileges, but they do have a healthy device. But again, because of their sensitive group and because this is a high business impact application that they're accessing, even with a low conditional access score, you might require them to MFA. And if the access score was higher, you might even block. And I think that's the case here, where we've got an anonymous config of the device coming in from an anonymous IP that you're unaware of, last seen in Asia, the identity's got some high risk. Right now, you're going to block access. So all of these conditions are kind of warranted, might warrant different conditions for when you enable MFA and even force passwords. That real-time identity protection has two roles. One is the role that we kind of just discussed, which was to be part of your MFA condition. As their real-time, I call it the FICO score for their credit, similar to like your credit, which kind of goes up and down over time. The identity protection service can actually look at a number of factors regarding your identity, things like when you last logged in, where was your last known location, how long has it been since a password change, were your credentials seen out on the dark web, have you had a couple challenges to your login process recently, things of that nature. And so you get put into buckets, high, medium, and low in terms of risk. And in fact, Microsoft's moving to a scale where it will be 0 to 100, 100 being the highest risk score, 0 being the lowest. So you can imagine yourself having a 72 risk score this morning, but yet a 86 this afternoon because your credentials were found out on the dark web. This can get surfaced as part of that conditional access, as well as surfaced in a portal that I'll show you momentarily. So with that, let's bust back out into my desktop and let's go into a little bit of demos. Oh, we don't need that graphic back. Let's go back to just looking at some portal pages. So here I've got an Office 365 tenant that we've got spun up. I've clicked on the admin tab, and this is what you get for Office 365. Within Office 365, if you have the licensing for it, depending on what licensing you own, if you own the Enterprise Mobility Suite, some of the capabilities of Enterprise Mobility Suite are surfaced right here in Office 365, including things like Cloud App Security, Azure Active Directory, Intune, and some other things that we'll be talking about. So with that, let's go to the Azure Active Directory portal. Okay. Azure Active Directory portal here can be used, and again, I don't want to, this isn't a how-to as much as it's just kind of to show you where some of these features are. Here's the self-service password reset. So right off the portal page, you can enable your users to reset their forgotten their passwords. Okay. Why use it? Reduces costs, improves the user experience. And remember, this could be the single landing spot and single set of credentials that's used to access many applications if you had this thing configured. So you can enter the users that you want to select this for and find your group of members. And this could be, again, groups or individuals. So you might take an individual as well as a group, such as engineering, or any groups that are available, or just individuals. Select those individuals, and again, you're creating a group with members. It's assigning the license. It's letting them know that they can use their password, and they have to set up their passwords in an email or a phone call, SMS, and turning that on. So self-service password reset is sort of one of the areas. Within Azure Active Directory itself, there's a number of things that could be done, including some of the branding. Here, you may have noticed the conditional access. So this is where you could set up a group to say, you know, what do I consider a location that's safe? Well, here at the office is safe, and that's known as a certain named location. And so you can go in and create IP ranges. So this could be corporate office, and kind of create a new office, a new location, and create IP ranges or countries as trusted locations. So again, I won't go through the exercise, but just kind of give you a little sense of kind of where this connects. And then also configuring which not only trusted locations, but what are your policies around that. Other items that were part of Azure Active Directory, you might have noticed, was things like your identity secure score. So this literally is a dashboard of the score impact, raising from 0 to 100 for where things are in danger, right? And so my identity score right now is here at 28, and you're kind of looking, and you can kind of look for and be alerted on people who are falling into certain ranges. So in addition to leveraging it as part of your login process, you actually can actively manage an alert based on certain risk scores. Now, these are all default policies down here, but you might suggest that logins from foreign countries, because you're an organization that does not travel at all, you might increase the score impact for that from foreign countries from 25 up to 45 or 60. Some things can be modified from the default to take advantage of that. So all of this can be accessed through Azure Active Directory, and I thought that would just be helpful to show. I also wanted to show applications. As mentioned, you can create a portal page where your users could come, and at this time, our portal page shows the following applications. You'll notice that many of them are Office 365 related, but you also have other applications such as ServiceNow that I think I just set this up yesterday. To access new applications, you're simply going in under New Applications, finding from the list of 2,500 applications which ones you might want to set up. They suggest a few for you here. So we might set up, let's say, Workday. And on Workday, Microsoft's done a lot of the hard work in terms of the logos and the certificates and what methods Workday supports in terms of provisioning for it. After you've got this set up and you've got some users that have permissions to access this application, you can go out and provision this and say, I would like the following group, HR and maybe several others, to actually have these credentials available in their web portal. Additionally, you can ask, are people allowed to just ask for this application? And you've got some controls there, right? Are they allowed to access it? Which group should allow approval for it? And IT can actually get out of this game and actually have things like CRM applications or HR applications pushed down to and designated from their respective departments. So again, just a little bit of an overview to kind of get you a perspective on that. If you were to go to something like My Apps, okay, which is the web portal, this will just kind of show you an example of what the end user would see when they're coming out. Okay, there'd be your logo in the upper corner. They would have authenticated, obviously, and based on their group membership and what applications you've provisioned, they're going to see some of their Office 365 applications, as well as potentially third-party applications that you had provisioned. Hopefully that kind of gives you a good snippet of what that looks like. The MFA experience is, I can certainly show that as part of the admin login, but or user logins, and maybe we'll do that later as time allows. Again, if there's any questions, happy to take them. Let's jump back into the PowerPoint. All right, very good. So to close out that section of kind of authentication process, we actually, sometimes navigating the console, sometimes just kind of laying out the things that you want to protect, all of those things can take a little bit of homework. And if you really want to kind of get things jump-started, we as an organization have noticed some, confusion or friction, if you will, regarding that. So what we've done is kind of bottled up a soup to nuts MFA process to go test it, get it working within your environment, setting up your ranges, applying the rules, getting users the experience they want on all of their devices, and doing that for a fixed fee. I think we're at $10,000 for a multi-factor authentication proof of concept. Again, getting this working with the with the technology you have, with the browsers that you might use within your organization. Setting up the conditional statements by which you want to access this, and just kind of getting to the results as quick as possible. All right, with that, let's move into the next section. I know that was one of our larger sections in terms of identity, and just gave you a dabble of what's possible within the surface of Azure Active Directory Plan 1 and Plan 2. And now we're going to move into identity-driven security. This is going to focus more on things called advanced threat analytics and cloud app security. Those products specifically are looking for the actual identity that you're providing. Things like the Very similar to they're looking for strange patterns and behaviors of your logins, and they're trying to surface that detail so that you can detect and alert on strange patterns happening within your environment. We see this quite often with our customers, pretty much on a weekly basis. We're being called into our customers where foreign logins are occurring to their mailboxes. They're not sure why. What they are seeing are phishing attempts, or they're seeing what's called business email compromises. And so this is a hot area for our customers' perspective. And what really is happening here is what we really need to do as organizations is add intelligence into our login process. And we saw how we can do that as part of our own access capability. But how can we take advantage of looking at our process and say something's weird? Well, we need computers ultimately to do it, and we need insights. Microsoft happens to be looking at a lot of logins. They process 2 billion logins a day, so they know when things are acting strange. They see patterns of behaviors that are strange, and they're able to surface this into some of their products. So specifically, some of those products, this is called Microsoft Security Graph, those products will help us in evaluating our Active Directory as well as our Azure Active Directory. And we can take a look at that now. And again, this is using machine learning and looking for advanced threat evaluations. So let's take a look at how this is done. Currently, your Office 365 is gathering every activity, assuming you've clicked the one button to turn this on, which is not a default setting. So we would suggest that you turn on activity tracking in Office 365. But Office 365 will track all activities relative to their services. Additionally, Azure Active Directory will track every login and every change, whether it be successful or otherwise. As you can see here in the middle of our screen, when I added the ServiceNow update, the service principal is located in the logs on the right. So there's significant logs being created there also. And there's also logs being created on your Active Directory on-prem. And they've been creating logs for years. And if you're an expert at looking at these logs and you spend the cycles to look at these logs in detail, you would notice strange patterns of behavior. Unfortunately, nobody has that time and nobody has an interest in evaluating logs at this level of detail. So we need computers to help us. Microsoft has an offering to look at your Active Directory logs. This is on-prem using the logic of cloud. Okay? This is called Advanced Threat Analytics, and it's part of the Enterprise Mobility Suite. There are 3 steps as to what it does. First of all, it's taking a look at everything going in and out of your Active Directory. Secondly, it's learning about what's going on. It's saying, you know what? Josie always logs on around 8 o'clock in the morning. Why is she logging on at 3 o'clock in the morning from a different location? That's a really strange behavior. And so based on its learning patterns, it can surface anomalous activity. And that's the third part, is detecting those strange behaviors and alerting notifications thereof. So it's really kind of a simple product in concept, and we're finding this to be a very helpful product to surface events, such as the ones that are illustrated here. Abnormal working hours, brute force attempts, password changes, computers that got added to the domain and then taken off the domain, account enumeration. Why is someone exploring all the number of servers that I have? Why is someone doing a pass the hash or pass the ticket exploit? So all of these things can be surfaced. We ourselves as an organization have leveraged this, and we've helped several dozens of organizations with this product. And it's not a very noisy product. That's the good news. It really is spending a while learning as to what is strange, but then some of the things that come out of it, you really do want to be warned about. So we highly suggest Advanced Threat Analytics for anyone who has Active Directory, which should be all of you. Again, other logs are generated with regards to Office 365, and if you're spending time looking at those logs, more power to you. More likely what you need is a computer to evaluate what's going on in Office 365 and surfacing those logs as to what you should be concerned about. And indeed, Microsoft has an offering, again, part of Enterprise Mobility Suite, called Cloud App Security for Office 365. Now, ironically, this is offered, the Office 365 part is actually offered as part of Office 365. And I'll kind of focus on this. The Cloud App Security product in general will focus on all applications, not just Office 365. Remember all those applications you were setting up, the ADP, the Concur, Box, and others, the Workday? Those applications also need monitoring. After all, as we mentioned earlier in this webinar, the average employee is using 12 to 15 applications, whether IT knows about it or not. So where is your data going? Right? So Cloud App Security gives you insight as to who's using external storage applications and so forth. In order to show this best, let's just go to a demo. Okay. So again, if you had noticed back on the administrative page for Office 365, one of the consoles that was available was Cloud App Security. Let's go to that console now. This is the Cloud App Security. And again, at this time, this is focused primarily and only on Office 365 because that's how I have it configured. Again, this is a bit of a separate product when licensed for just Office 365. It can be purchased outside of the Enterprise Mobility Suite. But if you're focused on all applications, let's go take a look at the general dashboard. Here in the Cloud Discovery dashboard, we have 4 roles that we can do here. So as an example, across our organization, I can see, because it's this is being leveraged in unison with your firewall, it's noticing the fact that you are leveraging 297 applications. By the way, this is real sample data, if you will. There are a number of cloud applications that get used, and if every employee is using 10 or 15 different applications, it would not surprise me to know that your organization's leveraging 100 plus applications across your organization. Not all applications need the same level of scrutiny. Some of these applications, such as cloud storage, might require specific scrutiny. Who's using cloud storage accounts, and why is 4.4 gig of my data being stored out there? Okay, you might be able to look at some of those applications in more detail down here and notice, okay, OneDrive is an authorized application, and I'm good with that. Box, Exchange, and maybe some others are not. So discovery of applications is one aspect of it. Obviously, there's other things that could be done in terms of you can look within their cloud application catalog. In this particular case, while you're only able to set up single sign-on access to 2,000 or 3,000 applications, this application is actually monitoring about 13,000 different applications. And within any of these applications, you could find, and we could go look at, let's say, within business management, the 733 applications. You might be able to see a specific application. I don't have anything highlighted here, but you can see risk scores, actions, and a lot of details with regards to the application. Okay, why is there security? Well, there's user audit trailing and compliance. So there actually is a catalog of all these applications that you can take advantage of, right? This one actually has GDPR capabilities and other compliance means too. So they get a risk score based on their adherence to certain security principles. The higher the score, the better from the application's perspective. So you can, review organization, which are your highest risk app scores, which ones maybe might be relevant to a certain compliance standard, or are relevant to a certain risk factor, such as file sharing. I would like to know all the file sharing applications that I'm looking for. So again, just kind of wanted to give you an overview of what's possible within the Cloud App Catalog, both for a series of SaaS applications in general, as well as specific to your Office 365 tenant. I'll show this portal in more detail when we go into the Office 365 webinar in a few weeks. All right, let's jump back into the PowerPoint. So that sort of completes that section. I guess at the end of the day, one of the things we find is that people have a lot of consoles, right? There's a lot of places to look for details, whether it be down at the logs itself, or even if you have a tool, who's looking at your backup consoles on a daily basis? Who's looking at your server consoles? Who's looking at your, wireless access point consoles? Who's looking at Active Directory for evaluation of what's going on? Who's taking advantage of patches and updates, malware on workstations? So with all these consoles, we're finding people need some organization and sometimes some hands around this. So Peters & Associates actually offers a capability to aggregate all of these logs into a single system. That's known as a SIM. We offer this as a service. So that things like ATA over on the left-hand side, or Active Directory, or wireless access points and backups and so forth can all be aggregated into one log system. You can maintain those logs for as long as your compliance needs might require, which might be 90 days or a year, as well as be alerted on and take action on security events that are occurring within your area. So we have an alarm trial. Alarm is our service, which is a SIM as a service. We have an alarm trial where we'll do actually 5 devices within that. Maybe it's your Active Directory, a backup server, wireless access point, a file server, and some others. And your firewall is a good example. We'll do those 5 devices for 3 months at $750 a month. So that's a option for you if you're looking for hands and for some expertise and technology to help you aggregate all the information coming from these consoles. All right, the third section of 4 is the manage mobile productivity. And in this particular case, this is focused on a layer that's not identity related, but more kind of one of the outer circles there, where there's devices, mobile devices, laptops, tablets, workstations, and so forth. And believe it or not, as we kind of move into this world of BYOD and managing data on devices that may be managed or unmanaged, this becomes a very important layer. So relative to our chart, we're going to look at the managed mobile productivity, and specifically we're going to look within the Enterprise Mobility Suite's Intune product. Okay, you'll see this comes with Enterprise Mobility Suite E3. It offers 3 capabilities that we have deployed in various fashions for dozens of organizations. One of those concepts is called Mobile Application Management, or MAM. Another is called Mobile Device Management, and certainly that one's been around for a long time. There's a number of third-party products that also do this, but mobile device management, actually putting policies on the devices, stopping cameras from working and so forth, or limiting camera usage or USB usage for data travel. And a third element of the Intune product is actually PC and Mac management. And we'll kind of talk about quickly about all 3 of those in PowerPoint format. So Intune is capable of all 3. It's MDM for devices, Windows phones, iOS, Android, tablets of all kinds, as well as mobile application management. These are typically Microsoft applications residing on unmanaged devices. It could be email and otherwise, and also the idea of managing PCs and Macs. It should be known that Intune also comes with, when you purchase Intune as part of Enterprise Mobility Suite, also comes with a CAL license, or a capability to leverage SCCM, and you have a client access license for SCCM as part of this also. So kind of gives you the best of both worlds, right? Maybe you're leveraging Intune for some of the MDM or MAM capabilities, but you may want to use Intune for managing some devices and use SCCM to manage additional devices for a stronger layer of that. We won't be discussing SCCM very much today, but it is important to note that there's capability to do some management there. All right, so mobile application management is simply this. You've got these applications. Let's say this is protecting app and data on unmanaged devices. This is a very common scenario. Organizations have these unmanaged devices. People say, hey, I'd like to get my email on my iPad. Today, all you can really offer is ActiveSync as part of Office 365, though Microsoft Office 365 does have one layer above that called MDM capabilities. But mobile application management will allow you to take a device and put some policies around it. So let's say in this example, you are concerned about email attachments within the Outlook icon. You can say that, hey, I'm going to protect all of the Office suite so that on those unmanaged devices, I've got some policies around Excel where you're not allowed to copy this into any application. The data that's in there is going to say, sorry, this data is protected. Equally, you could take data and say, hey, you're not allowed to paste that into non-approved applications. So I cannot allow you to save that to your personal storage, but yes, I do allow you to save that into, let's say, some approved storage, such as OneDrive. So you can set up parameters around the applications as to what's allowed and what's disallowed without management of the device. And that's key, right? No device registration is required with this. I'll call it light management, and it's very focused on the application and the data. Conversely, if you want device management, you can add that on also. It's available within the same product. This does require you to enroll the device, whether it be even Windows 10 devices that are on tablets, as an example. Surface devices can be enrolled in this, as well as iPads and Android devices and phones. You can do bulk enrollment. You can use the Apple configurator. You can purchase things out of the Apple Store and dispense them to Apple devices within your environment. So if you are taking advantage of Store, this is fully integrated there too. You can provision and put parameters around how these devices behave and act. So let's say you've pushed out a Wi-Fi profile that allows them to act like an internal device when they're here at the office. But outside of the office, they don't have access. Things of that nature. Or you could have so VPN profiles, email profiles, and Wi-Fi profiles can all be pushed down to these devices, making for some interesting ways to control their behavior in and out of the office. You also can you have a full range of policies, and by this I mean literally 1,000+ policies available to you. Oftentimes these are not done with BYOD devices, to be honest. That said, it would be very smart for you to say, hey, if you're a jailbroken device that has you've been messing with the operating system, and or you haven't employed the latest few iOS versions or Android versions, I'm not going to let you operate in our environment. So protecting devices based on certain minimum criteria, I think it's incumbent for IT to start having some of those controls. Additionally, you've got the ability to retire devices when people join and leave the organization. I think providing the full life cycle of capabilities is something that MDM has some skills at. And last but not least, this is Intune has a capability from a very easy cloud-based perspective to do, I'll call it light management of PCs. It does a great job of things like patching, antivirus management. It can do inventory for what devices are out there. It can do software distribution, keeping in mind the software has to be located up in the cloud. Those could be packages that you create up in a space and then push from the cloud. It does so I'll call it in a light way, meaning it kind of just bonks the mobile device on the head and says, hey, I've got something for you, and the device comes and grabs the software up to 3 times a day. So it's not real-time push, but it's got some great capabilities that are built right in. And if those capabilities don't suffice, then certainly you can leverage SCCM, or you can pair Intune with SCCM to provide things like operating system deployment or support for other desktops, power management, and other advanced features. So the co-management story between Intune and SCCM, kind of the better together story, is getting stronger and stronger each week. And we're not going to spend a ton of time talking about co-management, but do know that there's a full range of possibilities as to how to do PC and Mac management under Intune. This graphic is a little bit of an eye chart, but I kind of wanted to give you a perspective over on the right-hand side with the what's available with Exchange ActiveSync, which is native, what's available natively with Office 365, And then with the purchase of Intune through Enterprise Mobility Suite, all of these other features get lit up, including VPN profiles, the enrollment process, PC inventory, and so forth, as well as a client access license for SCCM. To kind of wrap this together, we have, again, people want to usually dabble with this. They want to see this working in their own environment. They'd love to see a single sign-on portal. They'd love to see Microsoft application management in play in their environment, and they want it personally for themselves. And so we developed what we call Enterprise Mobility Fast Track, which is a solution that's available here on the web. You can see the details thereof, but effectively, it's a smattering, a little smorgasbord of capabilities that are offered for one fixed price for us to come into your environment and kind of get things stood up. All right, and the last and final section that we'll go into, no demos in this section, unfortunately, but this is a very relevant area, especially in light of some of the compliance regulations, such as GDPR, or California now has a privacy policy that I know the United States government is actually looking at enacting their own privacy policy, but for those that are unaware of GDPR, it's a European standard, but it impacts anyone who is doing business within Europe, and the California standard will impact anyone doing business with California. And it essentially focuses on the privacy of individuals, meaning their data. And so just like we kind of go back to this model, data is at the very heart of everyone's organization. It's kind of your crown jewels, and it's what you're chartered to protect. And the privacy of data means that you need to know where that data exists within your environment. And to that end, you're going to need some help, because if I was to say, go find me every Excel spreadsheet or every Word document that contains a Social Security number or the word Joe Brown, right? Because Joe Brown is now concerned that his data is within your systems. GDPR and the California privacy law each have the obligation for you to not only find that data, but correct that data, or delete that data, or transfer that data within 30 days. So it's incumbent now on you to be able to at least find that data and begin a process of what I would call as labeling. Labeling is going to allow us to identify the data, and so let's take a look at what tools we have available to us to do this. Within the Enterprise Mobility Suite, you're going to find that information protection is chartered in one of two plans. Both of them are called Azure Information Protection, Plan 1 and Plan 2. I'm not going to differentiate them so much other than to say that Plan 2 has some capabilities to do things automatically, which extends its capabilities above Plan 1. Conceptually, though, here's what we're talking about. First of all, I guess I'd share, and you guys can certainly virtually raise your hands, but I think we've all sent an email accidentally to the wrong person, right? You meant to send it to Mike Weaver, and instead you sent it to Mike Ward, right? You started typing it in, it looked right, you sent it off. You've gotten the email back, hopefully, from the user saying, did you mean to send this to me? What if that send, accidental as it was, contained a spreadsheet with some data in it? Okay. In the compliance world, you'd be obligated to treat that as a loss, if you will, probably provide notification, and again, work with your lawyers to discuss the expense and the contingency plans that that's going to undergo. So it happens often, whether it's by accident or on purpose, and it's time that we start finding the data that we really care about within our organization and taking some additional measures. And so one of the tools to do that conceptually is something called Azure Information Protection. And what it's really doing is it's applying rights and permissions on the data itself. So as this little graphic indicates, we're literally locking up a Word document. And we're saying this Word document is only eligible to be seen by one person or two people. And it's only able to be seen by them, but it's not able to be printed. It's not able to be forwarded. It's not able to be cut and paste from. Okay? You're putting permissions directly on the documents, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoints, PDF documents of the world. And therefore, when they travel through systems, right, and when they're sitting at rest, they're encrypted. When they're traveling through systems, they're encrypted. And when they're being accessed on devices, there's notification that they've been accessed. There's policies still around them that they can't be forwarded. And they're being encrypted where they're at. So it's encryption through and through, and a lot of control over the data. Now this kind of sets the scene as to where we'd like to get to. How do we get there? So let's kind of take a look. First of all of your documents presumably have no classification today. So with classification, you have a number of different ways that documents can be classified. One of them is to let the users do them, right? The user might know best that this document contains some data, and therefore you could present a bar to them up at the top of their Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or other applications where they can raise it from maybe a default of internal confidential to confidential or to secret. Each of those policies might have different actions associated with it. For example, you can see that the application of the secret classification here means that the document itself gets a watermark. Presumably, it also means that our email system is not going to allow it to be sent out via email, or if it is being sent out, that it's being sent out encrypted. It also could provide notifications as to where this document is. So effectively, you're labeling this data in a user-driven way with a classification level. Classification levels, obviously, just think simple. Probably use the ones that are up there at the top, which are default. But you might want to develop your own classification scheme as an organization, or might already have one, and certainly those can be customized. Another way to classify documents is through reclassification. So maybe by default or through a user, it was classified as one way, but you might have a reason that you believe it's a different classification. And you can certainly, this is optional for administrators to allow them to be reclassified and provide justification. A third method is to just recommend a classification. Hey, I see some credit card numbers in here, and in fact I see more than one of them, so I'm going to recommend that this go to confidential. Maybe if you see a whole list of them, like 50 of them, you might go to secret. Again, all of these are recommended and kind of user-based. If instead your desire is to have the system actually do it, to actually do automatic classification, not just recommending, then you're going to want to leverage the P2 plan. P2 can actually take a look at the document, look at the contents, and say, I'm setting this automatically to a confidential level or to a secret level. Additionally, it can take data at rest, meaning data that's sitting in your G Drive or on SharePoint or in email, and it can comb through the system, look at the data, scrutinize it, and apply an appropriate classification level. Even if the classification doesn't do anything but label the data, it might be helpful. For GDPR reasons, as I kind of go into the next one, it's very important that you're able to produce that data within 30 days. So if you have to comb through all of your data within 30 days, it might not be possible. So why not begin the combing process now? Even if you're labeling data with no other impact to the data, no other policies and so forth, you could begin the labeling process now and at least know where your GDPR relevant data is, or your California privacy policy data is. Additionally, so the two things that are incumbent upon you is to be able to answer those data subject requests for GDPR and to notify people if there was a breach. For example, when that email went out that you sent to Mike Ward instead of Mike Werner or whoever I said, that would have been a breach notification that had to go out, and you would need to know who was in there and which data was relevant. So your labeling would have been helpful. So to kind of wrap this up, we've got three offers that we kind of gave you on the table. We've got the MFA proof of concept offer, which was a $10,000 jump start, if you will, for getting the conditional access started. We've got our alarm or SIM as a service for providing notifications and log aggregation from all of these systems, including advanced threat analytics. And we've got the enterprise mobility Suite Jumpstart, where you kind of get a sample and a dabble of some of the things that were available and some of the things you saw today. I do want to remind you that this was one part of 3 for the Enterprise Mobility Suite. You've completed that, and therefore you just need to attend 1 more. And if you attend 2+ webinars, you'll be eligible for a drawing for an Xbox One. The 2 webinars you see are October 25th, we're going to have it on Windows 10 and security elements thereof. And on November 8th, we're having that on Office 365. So if you haven't registered, please register today. The registration process can occur under the events URL that's down there, or just type in Peter's Events, or hit one of the emails that I'm sure we've hit you with before this. We actually have additional webinars that are out there. I think we have 5 webinars between now and 30 days from now. So kind of in a webinar frenzy, so good for you to learn about things. Might be a little difficult to read, but we've got this month in cybersecurity, Power BI, as well as HR Portal webinars in addition to our Office 365 and Windows 10. We blog often and try to be a thought leader with regards to security and other elements of the Office 365 and your IT infrastructure. So please check us out. Usually some of them are video recaps and 30-second videos and so forth.